All right. Whoa, Brenda, we already have 26 people in the
Oh my
session.
gosh. Okay.
I think that says a little bit about the hype. Am I
Oh,
right?
really? Okay. All right. Oh,
Okay,
28.
so I guess we'll just go on and jump right in. I
Gosh.
am going to introduce Brenda Rigney, podcast host and executive coach, Three Uniques Podcast. So here we go. Quote, I knew
Mm.
exactly where I was going, unquote. And this is what Brenda Rigney said to me about her path to become the coach that she is. I know this is true because I know in only a few short minutes, she made me cry. She made me cry during our pre-interview. Here's how that happened. So her bio reads, quote, I adapt my coaching to you as you develop throughout your career, unquote, which is important because she explained to me that being human is the evolution of change. Brenda and I, we shared our personal past experiences, the hurt, the love, the challenges, and the triumphs, and how it's all part of our purpose and accepting it because you, Brenda, we are all living our individual purposes every single day to maximize the human potential. It is my pleasure to introduce the host of Three Uniques Podcast and executive coach, Brenda Rigney.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Makari. And a disclaimer for everyone, I don't necessarily make people cry like in the first 15 minutes that I meet them. Anyways. But yeah, we had a great yeah.
Stage is all yours. There you go.
Okay. So welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for having me here at the Social HR Camp. Thanks to Jeff and Ron for adding me on the agenda and inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here. This is my first time presenting at the Social HR Camp, and I'm super excited that we still get to do this virtually. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing, but first add on a few points to what Bakari said about myself. So my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a colonial settler of Ukrainian, Scottish, and Irish heritage. And I'm just going to navigate my slides a little bit. Just going to come to greet you from the traditional unceded and occupied coastal Salish territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations, otherwise known as Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm thrilled to be here today. And as Bakari said, I'm going to be talking about Three Uniques, which is a program that I've developed over the last year. So it's still really new, but it's something I've been doing and I've been really honing in on in myself and my own practice over the last 25 years of leading and coaching people. I'm all about stepping into your brilliance because I believe fundamentally there's 7.7 billion people on this planet and somebody needs what you've got. I'm concerned about what is happening in the world right now. I see numbers continually staggering me about what's happening in the workplace. Like this one here, 41% of employees are considering leaving their employers this year or in the next year. I'm seeing another stat out there. 1 in 4 workers are planning on leaving their jobs after the pandemic. That's according to the Prudential Pulse of American Workers Survey. Employees are looking for a hybrid model. They want skills development. They're worried about, their jobs and, where that's going to take them. So they're looking for employers who are going to give them that. Benefits to support work-life balance, compensation increases that matches their skill level, and human-centered leadership. Which brings it back to the title that I have for our session today, Future Idea. This is like a concept that I threw out to Jeff and Deron, like that leaders will care about their team's vision and goals before the vision and goals of the organization. And what I mean by that, and it just takes it back to what Bakari was saying in the intro, is I already knew where I was going in my career, probably about a good 10 years ago. But prior to that, I was kind of just fulfilling the path that we were all fulfilling, like go to school, get a job, get married, have kids. And not that that's a bad life. I've lived that life and it's an amazing life. But I knew that there was something else that I needed to do. There was something bigger that I needed to step into, and I kept pushing it off. And when Bakari asked me, he's like, well, what was your purpose? And I'm like, well, I've actually always known what my purpose was, but I wasn't really fully living it. And that's where I think we have an opportunity in the field of HR and the field of leadership is to really understand what our employees want to do with their life. And once we understand that, and if we can offer them a moment in time, that could be a year, 2 years to work with us, awesome, that they can actually help fulfill in their purpose, they're going to be a way better human being on this planet than ever before, and we can be a part of that. So I want to take a little poll with everybody here because I'm curious, and just know that like this is not going anywhere. I don't know who's going to be answering the questions, but I'm really curious. What are your plans over this year or next year? Are you going to stay with your employer? Are you going to leave your employer? Are you going to switch your professions? Are you going to start your own business? Are you going to work for your employer and start your own business? Or you don't know? So I'm going to publish a poll. It's going to pop up for you. And I'd love for you to take just a couple seconds and take that mouse or that cursor and go to the area that you think is going to best reflect you over the next year. And let's just be honest. No one's going to see this. It's not going to get published in any survey. We're not going to track it back to you. But I'm just curious where it's going to land. And I think it would be good for the audience to get curious. Okay, so there's a lot of businesses getting on the side, starting up while you're working with your employer. About 15% are thinking about leaving their employer. Some people don't know. That's okay too. May even switch your professions. It's good to see that people, like half the group is thinking about staying with their employer, which is great. It'd be interesting to see if you conducted that poll anonymously with employees in your organization to see what their plans are, or better yet, for leaders to be equipped to have those conversations. And not as a gotcha, but more like, what are your plans and how can we help you? How can we get you grounded on what your purpose is and what makes you unique? So why 3 uniques? What about it? What's important about discovering your 3 uniques? Well, you can call it your purpose, your legacy, your mission. Some people call it a calling. Identify what's uniquely you. Define what makes up you, not about what you do. So you could be an accountant, you could be an HR professional, but what makes you unique? And it might not even be related to what your day job looks like. So how did I quantify or come up with 3 uniques? Well, I looked at it based off of years of, as I mentioned before, leading and coaching people, that I saw people gravitating towards like skills, talents, abilities. And that's definitely a bucket or a container of who you are and what makes up that individual. But it's so much broader than that. It's also your values, beliefs, and your passions. And then it's your experiences, past, present, and soon to be future. And some of those experiences may not even be relevant to the job that you have right now, but all of these 3 areas make up your 3 uniques. And you can see the arrow pointing to that sweet spot there. So what makes us all unique? Well, for me, I know what my 3 uniques are. I'm a pioneer, I'm creative, and I'm a curious learner. I'm continually like looking at blogs and posts. And I used to shy away from that. When I was younger in my sort of management and leadership career, people would be always like, oh yeah, Brenda's reading another like Harvard Business article. And I used to sometimes shrink away from that and even feel embarrassed about it. And now I just fully own it. Like I am a curious learner and people come to me for sources. I post content on LinkedIn every day. Some of you may follow me and I'm always sharing what I'm learning because I think it's just who I am and it makes me feel great about myself. So I'm curious, what makes you unique? So if you could take a few moments and go to the chat and just write down what's top of mind for you, what comes up for you that makes you unique. And think about, again, those skills, those talents, those abilities, or it could be values, beliefs, or your passions. I forgot that for a second. Or your experiences that you're super excited and proud about from your past, your current state, or your soon-to-be future. Just put it in the chat right now. Okay, so I'm reading some of them. Tenacious, empathetic, creative. Awesome. Self-aware, logical thinker. Thanks, Jen. We've got 56 people. Drop it in the chat. Even if you have like one thing that's unique about you. Love to know. Jacqueline, there's something I've always struggled with to determine where I am unique. Okay, well, this is good. Let's talk about it more. Passionate, empathetic, fun, spirited, curious, empathetic, continuous. Oh my gosh, it's coming in fast now. Let's see if I can go back. Creative, open-minded, fighter, winner, kind, passion, empathy, diplomacy, empathetic, Empathetic, Mark, great. Love bringing out the best in people, coaching, creative, adaptable. I love what Bakari said. Even if you don't want to accept it, what is it? Bakari, you can share yours. Empathetic. I think that's supposed to be funny. Maybe that's, yeah. So thanks for sharing what makes you unique. This is what I want to celebrate with people, and on my podcast every week, I bring on folks to interview and learn about what makes them unique. Okay, we're gonna keep going here. So what gets in the way? And this came up, I think, in the chat as well. Okay, thanks. Let's see, we've got resourceful, keen, restless, empathetic. Love it. So what gets in the way sometimes about forming our three uniques? Well, me and my beliefs. And where do those beliefs generate from? Well, it could be, doubt, worry, judgment, like someone's gonna judge me for, being resourceful, or like I said before, a curious learner. And I did feel that judgment at certain points in my career, and then I shied away from it. And whenever I shied away from it, I wasn't necessarily being my best self. So once I figured out what those three uniques are with me, it's like now I just like fully step into it every single day. And I know exactly where I'm going, what I'm gonna be doing tomorrow, because I'm just continually living those three uniques. So what tools do I have to help me with that? And I, you, us, all of us together. Well, here's some ones that I work on with my clients on. Journaling, meditation, moving my body. So whenever I'm like disassociating from myself, like I'm hiding myself or shrinking behind that curtain, as soon as I start moving my body, breathing, really getting in touch with like what's important to me, I then step into my three uniques. So somatic experiences, nutrition, sleep, drinking water is really important. I'm gonna take a sip right now. Even going through potentially therapy, using a therapist in different aspects of your life, whether it's with relationship, trauma informed. Essential oils are really great to kind of shift that mindset for myself. Being in nature. So right after this session, I already told Bakari and Jeff I'm heading to the just decompress from the session, because I try and put a lot of myself into these type of sessions. Coaching, working with coaches, listening to music. Music is really important. Just before I sign on to do this, I put on my favorite song that just kind of gets me back in myself, which is, I'll share it with you, I'm totally fine sharing it, is Katy Perry's Fireworks song. It's such a great song to kind of lift my body up and just get me moving. And then touching different surfaces, soft, hard, cold, warm. It just gets me present and back in my body. Here's a great exercise that I'd love for us to do. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, doesn't matter how big it is, but I'd love for you to take on your piece of paper and draw a circle. So even, I'll just do it on this blank piece of paper. It can look like that, if you can see on the screen there. And what I'd love for you to do is everything that goes inside the circle is what you want in your life. It's really important to you. At all costs, you're always gonna make sure that these things are there. So I dropped a couple things in my circle, which are my kids, I'm rested, I love hiking, reading, leadership. That's really important for me. The things that go outside the circle are obligation, guilt, feeling tired, like just being exhausted, not caring for myself. Shame could be in there, fear or doubt or worry. So the reason why I do this exercise a lot with my clients, it's a great technique to use to just get centered and grounded on who you are and what's important to you. And even going back to the three uniques with the three circles, you could put in skills in here, like learning, for me, values, beliefs that are important to me, experiences like travel. I go to Africa quite a bit. Haven't been in the last year and a half, but I will be going back as soon as I can. So what I'd love for you to do is take a few minutes, draw that circle on a piece of paper, and this is an interactive part of our session today. I'd love for you to write in the middle of the circle, what are the things that are important to you that you always want to make sure you have in your life? And then I want you to take a couple more minutes and write on the outside of the circle the things that you don't want to see in your life. So just take a few minutes to do that. And then what I'd love to do, and I'll just put this thought in the back of your mind, is I'd love to have a volunteer raise their hand, come up on stage, and share what's in their circle. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Katy Perry's good too. Yeah, I took my daughters to see her as well. Lots of fun. Yes, Laura, I love going to Africa. And we've had talks about going to Africa. It's such an amazing continent. And I'll go back there as soon as I can. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys give the group a couple more minutes. So everything that goes inside the circle are the things that you want in your life. Everything that you don't want to have in your life, and there's some examples there that I gave, like obligation, guilt, fatigue, you put outside the circle. So we're in Africa. So in Africa, the first time I went to Africa was in 2018. I went to build a school in northern Ethiopia with 15 other people. We had a fundraise for 3 months. So I fundraised $23,000 just by reaching out to folks on LinkedIn and asking them for money, and they gave it to me. And I went there and we helped build a school in northern Ethiopia, which was phenomenal. I was there for a month. And then I was there in 2019 in Kenya. That was fun. That was more of a vacation. We went on safari, but we did also do some work in a school in the Masai Mara. Okay, so Bakari, I see like a red dot. I think we have someone that's got a raised hand. I'd love to pull them up onto stage. Oh, is that Laura? Oh, hey, Laura. Can you hear me? I think you might be on mute.
You are right. I am on mute. Thank you for that. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for volunteering.
Hey, yeah, my pleasure. You know, me, anything to get on stage, right?
Awesome. So what are some things that you have in your circle that are really important to you?
Okay, so inside my circle, I have the ocean. So actually, you know, right now we're getting our house ready to sell. That's because I want to go live on Vancouver Island near the ocean. If I could live right across the street from the ocean, that'd be perfect. I also have dogs. I have 2 small dogs that are often the bane of my existence, but more often the loves of my life. So I have them. I have hiking. I have reading. I have camping in my Volkswagen camper. I also have family and friends, and then more work-related, I have people development. And then outside my circle, I have stress, worry, frustration, financial worry, because I'm self-employed now, and that means I don't have that steady paycheck all the time. Closely related is exhaustion.
Yes.
And then outside of there is feelings of being stopped in my career.
Oh, love it. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
And then Bakari, do we have anyone else that wants to share? I think there's still like a red hand or a raised hand. Okay, I think, oh, we got a couple. Can I just pull them up? Oh, Jeff's coming up. Okay, hi, Jeff.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks.
Well, let me turn on my camera. I have to turn it on manually. Okay.
Sure.
All right, so I've got some cool things on the inside. I've got my kids, which is very, very important to me. Personal health, which is probably something that I need to do a better job with. My marriage, financial health, my freedom, personal freedom.
Nice.
And I say more from a movement and travel perspective.
Right.
And obviously my sport, and then from a work standpoint, HR tech. So that's what I really love. On the outside, I really have 3 things. One is stress, something that in the last year has gotten worse, and tiredness, which is connected, and then worrying about my family back in Vancouver, which is something that,
Yeah, I know. It's tough right now not being able to get connected to people physically. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
So one of the things I always say to my clients when we go through this exercise, and maybe we can bring up another person. I think we have time. We're good. Oh, we got Courtney. Okay. Hi, Courtney.
Hi. Can you see me okay?
Yeah. You're not. Oh, there's your video. Okay, great.
Oh, there you go.
Nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Brenda. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I can share. So some things that are really important to me are family, holding space for self-care, traveling, leadership, friends, and financial stability. And then some things that I don't want are burnout, anxiety, illness, and lack of growth.
Awesome. So Courtney, this is our first time connecting. How was it just even going through this exercise, like as quickly as we are? Like sometimes I'll spend more time on it with my clients and we'll dig into it a bit deeper, but just even at this stage, like how is it for you just writing those things down?
Yeah, I think it brought a lot of gratitude because like realizing what I have in my circle is really, really great. But then of course it brought some like awareness, especially in the circumstances that we're in, of some of those things that I don't want that like, you know, sometimes find a way to creep in. So yeah, it was like a great reflection piece for sure.
Good, yeah. So one of the tips I'd give to you and everyone else that's listening is what I put into my practice with my clients is what we want to try and do now is that when we, you know, kind of pack in that circle with all the things that we want in our life, we make sure we schedule those things and we make that circle bigger. So it's not necessarily about making strategies or making plans to work on the outside of the circle, because we're already really good at doing those things. We're already probably spending lots of time there. And, you know, and our mind will just go there naturally with our doubts and our worries about things. So we don't need to put any more time into that outside of the circle. It's more the inside. So to your point, I'm going to use your words about just like, it's the gratitude, it's the abundance of like what you've got in that circle, and make it wider. So schedule it, put it into your calendar, and even schedule it first before everything else. And then you're truly living, you know, that purpose for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I love that.
Thanks for sharing. I think we have time for like one more. I'm going to bring up Melanie. She's still there. Hi, Melanie.
I'm here. Can you see me? I guess you can't see me. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, camera's good.
Oh, you can see me.
No, you need to press your camera.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know where to do that. Oh, yeah, we go.
Yeah, there you go. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, mine are quite similar to yours and Jeff's. I like how Jeff spoke a lot about freedom. So I have a 3-year-old. I don't have much freedom right now, but what came up was financial freedom, personal freedom when we can do that. Obviously my daughter, my partner, super important, being rested and being as healthy and fit as I can. And it's so important that you mentioned scheduling, because I feel like now that I've gone super busy, it's about scheduling that workout every day and making sure that it's done, because if it's not going to get done. There's so many other things right in the way. And then, thanks. What was out of that circle? It's very interesting how you mentioned guilt. So as a working mom of a young child, I feel that all the time, that she's, you know, daycare full time, and definitely feel that guilt. And, you know, kind of the opposite of what I had in the circle was the opposite. So being unhealthy, being unfit, and kind of pushing that to the side. And then micromanagement. Yeah. Which is one reason why I've, you know, also decided to work for myself, is being able to just kind of to manage myself and to kind of go capture that freedom as well, but to be able to do that and not have to kind of live under someone else's leadership. So
thank you for sharing that. And the point too around micromanagement is that when we get into these conversations with our people about what they want in their life, and then we give them the space to do those things, we actually don't need to manage them. They can manage themselves. Right? It's like, I know the things that I've got in that center circle, it's like, I actually know how to do. I love doing them. I don't need anyone to manage me on how to do them.
Exactly.
No, you know, that's my whole thing. It's like, just make that circle bigger and wider, and do that for your people, and just let them go, and they can do it themselves. And then you just work on your circle. Like that's how if everyone just worked on their circle, we'd be all good. We don't need to manage other people's circles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Melanie. I appreciate it. Okay, and I know that we've got Brenda, but Brenda, I think we might be running out of time, so we can chat offline about it. I want to just get back to a couple more slides and then leave it open for Q&A for folks. So let's see. Okay, so your 3 uniques. So how do you live your 3 uniques? Well, one, you can do that circle exercise that I just showed you. You can go back to the three bubbles that I had around what are my skills, my talents, my abilities? What are my values, beliefs, and passions? What are the experiences that I have? Past, current, soon to be future. And then once you get those things are identified and defined for yourself, it's really putting them into a vision for your life. What's your vision over the next 10 years to actually live those 3 uniques in all domains of your life? Personal, professional, health, wealth, spirituality, community, wherever you want to spend your time. And then set up goals for yourself over the next 1, 5, and 10 years to really fulfill on that vision. And then lastly, it's declarations. It's the words that we use to define ourselves that either bring us up and help us live our 3 uniques every day, or it's the words that we use to describe ourselves. And there's a distinction that I just said there, define ourselves versus describe ourselves. We have always lots of time for people to describe things about us that sometimes are true and not true. We have an opportunity to find who we are and bring out those 3 uniques. So that really wraps up my presentation today. I want to leave it open for any questions that people have. I know there were some things in the chat that I may have seen or I may have missed. So if there's something else that you think is important that you want to talk through, then let's go through it, but I'd love to answer any questions.
Hey, Brenda, if I may, again, monopolize a little bit more of your time, I'd like to maybe start off some of the Q&A session. I put it in the chat, and I'd like, I know you touched on it before, but I'd like for you to, maybe dig deeper if possible. How important is it to identify and know what it is you don't want versus, and again, with what it is you do want? And I say that because, I just remember once hearing someone say, if you don't know what you want, then you'll probably end up with that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too. I'm going to go back to that slide just from a visual. It might help some folks when we're chatting. Where is it? Oh, I went too far back. Sorry. Let me go back a little bit. I can see here on my preview finder. Here. Okay, so one of the things I would always say is, yeah, you want to make sure you're identifying the things that you don't want in your life, because there's a concept out there called barriers. Like knowing what not barriers, but boundaries, knowing what your boundaries are. And sometimes that's like thrown around a lot on social media. And how I like to define it is that this circle now becomes my boundary, right? So it's important for me to identify what these things are that I don't want in my life, because if I don't identify them, they will creep in. It's kind of like we talk about it in projects like scope creep. It's like if we're not clear on what the project is that we're working on between, teams, then, all these things will come in. And that's where you hear about things like procrastination, distraction, the purple squirrel, the rabbit hole, whatever those things are that you use to sort of describe those things that make your eyes wander off the page. So it's important to define those things that you don't want. And then that circle, like it just becomes the circle, like the actual ring around the circle becomes even stronger because you know exactly what you don't want to bring into your life.
And I'm looking at the chat here. Can you relate this to what Mark commented on? You can tell who someone is by their calendar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mark, if you want to come on and chat a little bit about that, but that's definitely, I agree with that. There's a concept called time blocking that some of you may have heard about. So the whole idea behind time blocking is that when I'm working with my clients, starting them off with what makes you unique, and then how can we build more of that into your life? And once you're clear on your purpose, then you put your purpose into your calendar. Mark, did you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I think to your point earlier, if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I find that you get so wrapped up with things that it's like, oh, I'll get to that later. And for me, it's always later. And if I don't put it in my calendar and commit to doing it, I won't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for jumping up. And then Julie actually in the chat brings up something that I think is really key too about the brain needs direction. Let's give it a positive one. I absolutely agree with that because, from a neuroscience standpoint, we've got our hindbrain, which is sort of our fundamental brain that helps keep, everything moving, ticking, etc. But it also, when it's confronted with things that it doesn't like, even things that it likes, right? Like even the things that bring us joy sometimes can be triggering sometimes for our brain. And so it'll cause some type of reaction. So it's important to make sure that we know the things that upset us, bother us, we don't want to have in our life so that, we can help balance the flow of like everything that we're doing. So this is just, again, it's a helpful exercise to kind of calm that thinking, calm our reaction to things when we know exactly what we want.
Hey, Brenda, check out what Mike Bianchi just put in the chat. It's pretty profound. He goes, what do you do when what you don't want in your life starts to eat your inner circle?
Yeah. So Mike, that's a conversation around boundaries again. First thing I always say to folks is you need to do like an exercise like this, either with a coach or a therapist, depending on, you know, where you need that assistance. And to do an exercise like this, first you need to identify it yourself. Then you may need to get some coaching or some tools on how to have conversations with people. It's usually people that come into your life, right? That are saying, hey, I need you to go do this, or this is an obligation in our family or at work, or whatever those things are that are making you not want to live what's inside your circle. And you may need to learn how to have those conversations with those people in your life. And they could be really important people. Could be a parent, could be a spouse, could be a child. But setting those boundaries, and although it might seem frustrating for the person on the receiving end of the boundary, you want to do it in a way that obviously still respects them, their boundaries. So it's you know, it's not something I can kind of solve for right now, but I think it's really important to be able to define what your boundaries are by using an exercise like this, and then being able to have that conversation with people that are in your life. To, you know, you want certain people to be part of that circle, but you also want to make it clear what that looks like. And, you know, and then you create that boundary. And again, you stay true to it through your own integrity, your schedule.
Hey, Brenda, do we have time to talk about or to address what Courtney wrote in the chat? Because I think it's really good. I think there's still such a culture of overwork in organizations where the pressure to work overtime in order to get ahead, promoted, is still somewhat glorified. Hopefully it starts to turn around more and more. I know in the States, it's almost accepted that if you want a job that pays a certain amount and you're in your 20s, you're going to be working 60 to 80 or more hours each week. You're not going to have a social life. You're not going to see your family, but in return, you get a really nice apartment. You get a lot of money in your bank account, and you get to drive a really nice car. And I think that some people, you know, they prepare themselves mentally for this. They know what they're getting into, and they accept it, and they do it because they know what the payoff is.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to acknowledge Courtney, Mira, Brenda, like great comments. Thank you everyone for sharing in the chat. So a couple things. This goes back to some of the stats that I was giving earlier. We are in a convergence of, you know, of big proportions. Like we talk about employee engagement, and I know there's been other speakers over the last like day and a half talking about employee engagement. We've been talking about employee engagement for 15 to 20 years, since like literally since I've like walked into HR and operations and leadership, and motivating people. That's what we used to call it before. So the reality is that it was bad going into the pandemic. Now we layer on a pandemic and economic upheaval and all these other things, diversity, inclusion, racism, discrimination, all these issues that are just getting like magnified during this really tough time that people are going through. There is going to be like a convergence of like a big, you know, at odds with workplaces. If employers aren't realizing it now, and they're just like, oh yeah, 5 people left, great, we'll just go hire 5 people. That's not gonna cut it anymore. It's not gonna cut it. So the things that I was saying earlier that employers are looking for, hybrid solutions, skills development, compensation. The reality is, and we saw it from some of the polls, there's like, out of the people, there's like 58 people in this group, 16% of them said that they're gonna go start their own business in the next year. So the reality is if you wanna make 200,000, you can go make 200,000. You know, we work in a confine of how business has been operating since the Industrial Revolution, that you work for an employer, they pay you for services rendered, don't ask for very much, we got you the foosball table, you should be happy, right? And it's just like, you know, but it's this exchange of goods. And the reality is that we're people. Like everything that people were bringing up, Jeff, Melanie, Laura, that were coming up on stage to share what they wanted. There was nothing in there about like, oh, I love Excel. I love doing reports. And so I think the thing is that like, there's going to be a convergence of this where employers are just going to, there's going to be a case of employers are going to win in this because they're really recognizing what employees want. And there's going to be a whole bunch of employers that are going to lose out on great talent. And it's going to affect their customer experience. It's going to affect their product offering and their services and their business. So.
And with that, Brenda, thank you so very much for your time. Because again, time is the single greatest, most valuable commodity that we have. If people want to connect with you further, how can they do so?
Yeah, I'll go back to this last slide here. Let's see. Here, there's my information. So you can find me at 3uniques.com, on my Instagram handle at your3uniques with the number 3, and then my podcast, which is on, you just go to my link tree and you'll find all the stations like Apple, Spotify, etc.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bakari. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Jeff.